Hello, Kansas and Western fans. Today I'm going to do another How I Do Stuff video, and this is going to be in regards to adding barbed wire along the tops of security fence. This is going to feature Whistle Stop Models fencing, and this is one of their 12-foot tall examples that I've already done. And you can see the barbed wire that I've not thread, actually it is thread, but that I've glued to these struts that are part of the fence. So you kind of need those struts in order to do this, and I'm not sure how many other fencing kits out there have that. But we're going to talk about how I did that the first time, and I'll show you how I do it step by step and what I use for that purpose. So here I've got a 6-foot example of security fence from Whistle Stop Models, and you can see the struts there. And you want to make sure you're doing the back of the fence for this, because the fencing is more likely on your layout going to face forward with those struts, and I'll show you what I mean here in a second. If you can see here the profile of this piece of fencing, you can see the struts kind of lean in one direction, and if you see. This is the front of the fence where you can kind of see the fencing material is actually sitting on top of the posts, and the back of the fence where the fencing material is on the other side. So you can kind of see how those struts lean forward. So you're going to want to put the string on the back end of this just to preserve the best look for the forward-facing part of your fence. Okay, as far as the rest of the tools that you're going to need, I've just got a couple of these larger Tamiya paint jars here that I use for weights, and I'll place those at either end of the fence just to hold the string in place or the thread in place while it dries. I'm using just a regular Tester's brand of super glue. The cap has the brush as a part of the cap inside, so that's handy for placing the right amount of glue that you need. And then this is a brand of thread that Walmart sells, and this particular color is called metallic. I don't think it's metallic silver or anything like that. It's just called metallic. And this, one reel of thread ought to be more than enough that you need. And this is assuming you want to do fairly new fencing. If you wanted to do an older fence that's been patinaed a little bit, seen some weather, whatever, you'd probably want to use like a light gray to show that effect. But we're going to use metallic today. And then I just have obviously a pair of scissors here. And then when I use any super glue, I try to use it on a piece of wood, just so I don't put too much glue on my modeler's hobby mat here. So I just have this sitting on a piece of wood, and I want to make sure it's long enough at either end of the fence to put those jars. And I'll explain why here shortly. All right, so hang on a second. All right, so the first thing you want to do is obviously pull out enough string to be more than enough for what you need for your stretch of fence. And I would say a good 2 inches on either end should be enough, because you want to make sure you can put your weights, and I'm just using jars. If you had like heavy metal weights that I've seen a lot of modelers use, that would be way better, I'm sure. So I need to find some of those, but for now I just have these jars. So I'm using about 2 inches beyond what I need. And so once I get that, I'll just cut that. Now, I haven't tried doing more than one of these at a time. I think that would be too much, because we're talking a single millimeter of space between each individual strand. So we're just going to do these one at a time. So I have this cut. So now I'm going to get this placed on my piece of wood and get it ready for some glue. Okay, now comes the tricky part, and this would be the exactly 4th time that I've tried to do this, so you're just going to have to bear with me. The tough thing is this thread is a little bit springy, so it wants to fight you a little bit, and I think the easiest thing to do once you've got your thread centered is to try to get one end of it anchored, and it really doesn't want to participate in this at all. And I'll just start here at I'll use the base one first. Have your glue at the ready. And it might be easier just to do a dab first. And there's not really a whole lot of way to prevent the use of too much glue, but from that first example you saw, it didn't really turn out so bad, so I'm not too worried about using too much. I think once you hold this first strand in place for a little bit here and let that set up to some degree, that thread should hold in place enough that you can get your weight put in place. And this is where those really heavy metal weights might be really helpful. And now I've got super glued to my finger a little bit there. All right, so it's trying to stay on. We'll go ahead and place the first weight. Now we're going to just dab each strut real quick. I can get this lid off of here. Now, the important thing at this point is to make sure that it's as taut as possible. All right, I think that looks pretty good. It's at the base. And we'll just place our weight here on the other end. And this is why it's good to have plenty cut so you can still work with the ends of the thread on either side of your weights just to kind of pull them taut. Because once you get it to where you want to sit, it should stay in place. Now that it's touching the glue on every strut, it's starting to hold itself taut. Now, the first time I did this, I let each strand dry overnight just to make sure, because there's just not a whole lot of contact there between the string, the glue, and the struts. So I don't screw around with that. Let's just wait overnight and not even worry about it. So I'm going to let this dry and come back and film the installation of the second string. And then we'll do the third string and we'll show how it looks afterwards. So I'll get back with you here in a little bit and show you what this looks like after it dries. Okay, so we've let the first one dry. Now you can see that actually worked out pretty well. It's actually fairly level or parallel with that top rail. So now we're going to put that second one on. I'm just trying to find a center point here on these struts so that we leave enough room at the top for the third string. The hardest thing is to just get this to stay long enough to get your weights put on. Then once you get those put on, it usually stays put by itself pretty well as that super glue starts to dry. And so the second hardest thing I guess would be just to make sure that everything is parallel so that you have a good look there at the end. Hardest thing about working with thread is it's so small. Sometimes it's hard to even realize whether or not you're holding onto it. But once you get your weights placed and your thread taut, and it's pretty easy just to sit there and let it dry. That looks pretty good. And again, we're talking about barbed wire here, right? So if you've never worked with barbed wire, it's about 1/8 of an inch thick wire, plus it's got the barbs, and it's twisted wire. And so you don't have to have it necessarily perfectly flat and level, because in reality it's not going to be that way. It's pretty stiff wire, kind of difficult to work with, but you can get it fairly close. It ought to look all right. I think we've got it there now, so we'll let this one dry. Maybe make a small adjustment there. And then we'll come back and do our last string. Okay, now we're ready for our last piece of thread for that top level of barbed wire. And as I've continued to work on this, I'm learning out the best techniques for doing this. And I think this time I'm going to go ahead and put the glue on first. And then all I have to do is stretch the thread on top of it. Let's see how this works. And again, it's easier to definitely have extra cut, because then you can pull it taut from either side of your weights, theoretically. And then it's also not a bad idea to have a little pick handy. Of course, this one is going to be the most difficult, because I'm trying to get it right here on the ends of the struts for that top level. And it's not really wanting to cooperate. I found that it's helpful to add more glue after you get the string where you want it, because the glue that's already on there is helping to kind of hold it steady, but then I'll put a little extra glue on it to kind of reinforce it. All right, I think that is not too bad. Of course, then at this point you're battling perfectionism, which is a problem for me sometimes. Yeah, and that's what happens when you try to make it perfect, is you often make it worse. We'll keep messing with it here. See if we can't get it right. Of course, with this much super glue, I'm at risk of super gluing the fence to the wood. So I'm going to have to make sure that it's loose enough that I can move it. And of course, when I'm videoing this, it's much more difficult than it was the first time I did it on that first piece of fence that I showed you. Yeah, I had to flip the fence up to make sure it wasn't going to stay glued to the wood there. At this point, you're probably wondering, is this even worth the effort? I'm just trying at this point to make sure it's actually on the struts. And I think I'm about done with the weights. And I'm just going to try to hold it here for a sec. See how that works. All right, rather than have you guys sit here and watch me mess with this for who knows how long, I went ahead and just paused recording just so I could get it set, because I think you got the idea of what I'm trying to accomplish. So I've got it set now, so now we're just waiting on it to dry. So I will check back in once that is done, so we can hopefully see the final product. Okay, so here we've allowed this to dry, and I've removed the weights. So, and I haven't been showing this last step, which is to just kind of nip the end of the thread off here. And I just kind of use my plastic nippers because scissors are kind of too bulky to do this with. So let's see if I can get this done on camera here. There's that end. Now, I've only been doing this with a single segment of these whistle stop models fencing. I don't know how many you'd want to try to do at one time. Obviously, the longer it is, the more difficult it's probably going to be. I don't know. I'll probably do longer ones just to see how hard it is. But if you do, obviously, you're going to have to do them in one solid string. I guess the other alternative would be to maybe cut a segment of this off, and then you could marry the top and the bottom pipes to the end of the post here, and then you'd have almost a seamless transition with the barbed wire. But that's how it looks when it's finished. There's a little bit of leftover goop there from too much super glue that made contact with the wood, but that's why I do this on wood, because it's easier to peel that off. If somebody has a better idea, please let me know on what to do this on, what kind of surface, but that shouldn't be too difficult to get rid of. And there's just a little bit of a bend there. That end actually popped off after the last video when I did that second string, and I re-glued it and could not make it straighter than that. So, but like I said, I mean, barbed wire isn't going to sit perfect forever. So, but that's how it looks for now. Hope that comes across in the video. Hope you found this helpful. If anybody else has a different way, or maybe even a better way to do something like this, please let me and the others know. I'm definitely one that likes to continue learning, but this is how I've managed to do this so far. So everybody, thanks for watching, and have a good day.